Look, I'll be straight with you. I've bought around 20 properties at auction, sold 5, turning 1.3 million into 2.6 million in the process. But here's what nobody tells you about property auctions. They're not the bargain basement everyone thinks they are. And if you don't know what you're doing, you will absolutely get burned. I'm fed up of seeing people think auctions are some magical place where you can pick up 30k houses that are worth 80k. That's complete nonsense. The reality is far more complex, and there are specific strategies that separate the winners from the losers. In this video, I'm going to show you everything from A to Z about buying properties at auction. How to spot the real deals, how to avoid the traps that catch 90% of bidders, and most importantly, how to actually make money instead of losing it. I've been doing this since 2009. I've picked up properties for as little as 30k, and I'll share the exact process I use, including the 200k profit I made on one block that everybody else walked away from. To start, let me show you why most people fail at auctions before they even place their first bid. The auction reality check. Here's the thing. Auctions have completely changed, and if you don't understand this shift, you're already at a massive disadvantage. Pre-COVID, an easy method of buying, you could physically get to travel to auctions, you could get catalogues in the mail, and if you weren't already on the list, you weren't getting access. Now, anyone with an internet connection can bid from their living room. The volume of people analysing every single listing has scaled massively. Competition is fierce and bargains are harder to find. Let me tell you what happened to me just last month. I was watching a property I'd researched thoroughly. I knew it was worth around 80k. It needed about 15k of work and the guide price was 45k. I thought I'd get it for maybe 55, 60k maximum. By the time bidding finished, 73k. The winner paid more than they could have bought the similar property for on the open market, and they still had 15k of refurb costs ahead of them. That's the new reality. People getting caught up in auction fever, paying over the odds because they think they're getting a deal. But here's how you avoid becoming one of those statistics and actually find the properties where the numbers work. So why properties really end up at auction? Understanding why a property is at auction is crucial because it determines whether you're looking for a genuine opportunity or walking into a trap. Let me be honest about the 3 real reasons properties go to auction. First reason, speed. When the hammer goes down, you exchange contracts immediately. The seller gets their money in 28 days, not 3 or 4 months like with estate agents. Reason 2, they're trying to create a bidding war. Sellers know that when you get people emotionally invested, sitting in their living rooms thinking, I want to win, they'll often pay more than what the property's worth. Reason 3, there's something wrong with the property. Could be structural issues, title problems, difficult tenants, or legal complications. Here's a perfect example of the third category. I was looking at a block of flats that seemed like an incredible deal. The guide price was 85,000, the estimated value was 150,000. It looked too good to be true, and it was. When I dug out the legal pack, I discovered the previous owner had converted a large house into flats, but one of them was only 30 square meters. Most lenders won't touch anything under 35 to 37 square meters, which meant the whole building would be difficult to mortgage. The seller knew this would be a problem for most buyers, so they put it to auction, hoping somebody would get caught up in the excitement and not do the proper due diligence. That's exactly the kind of trap you need to know how to spot and avoid. My biggest auction success and disaster. Let me show you the difference between doing auctions right and getting it completely wrong. Both experiences have taught me crucial lessons. The winner. I bought a block of 8 units, 5 flats and 3 shops for 300k. Everybody else walked away from this one because it looked complicated and needed some work. But here's what I saw that they didn't. The shops were already rented to stable tenants. The flats only needed basic improvements and the location was solid. I put down 30k with 90k bridge and finance, spent another 30k on essentials, EICRs, tidying up, cleaning the car park. 6 months later, I refinanced for £502,000. I borrowed back 350k, I got all my money back, plus I now make 2.3k monthly in profit. That's a 4k income for the building against a 1.7k mortgage. The disaster. Aberbeeg. This is where I thought I was being clever and it backfired spectacularly. I bought for 43k, thinking it was super cheap. I couldn't be bothered to drive to Aberbeeg every day. I decided to flip it back to auction and I expected 65k plus, but I got 56. After borrowing costs, stamp duty, HMRC, solicitors fees, I made 3k profit for 6 months of hassle. I should have just sourced it to someone else for 4k and saved myself the headache. The lesson? Convenience-based decisions usually cost you money, and you can't always rely on other people to see the same value as you do. Now let me show you the due diligence process that would have helped me avoid that Aberdeen mistake and find more deals like the 8-block unit. The due diligence process that actually works. This is where most people fail, catastrophically. They see a guide price of 40k and get excited and bid without doing proper research. Here's my exact process that saved me from countless disasters. Step 1, the legal pack deep dive. I read the whole thing. Yes, most of it's irrelevant, but the critical information is buried in there. I was looking at a property recently where everything seemed perfect. Good location, decent condition, reasonable guide price. But buried on page 47 of the legal pack was a clause about chancel liability. It turns out there's an ancient law that says if a local church needs repairs, they can demand money from certain properties in the area. Most mortgage lenders won't touch properties with this risk unless you've got insurance. It's only £50 for 25 years of insurance. But if you don't know about it beforehand, you could find yourself unable to get a mortgage and stuck with a property you can't refinance. Step 2, the 3-tier comparable analysis. This is crucial, because you need to be profitable even in the worst case scenario. I look for 3 types of comparables. Type 1, worst case. The cheapest sale on the street. I need to understand why it was cheap. Type 2, middle case. Street comparable with the similar spec if available. Type 3, same property type within a quarter of a mile radius. I need to be happy with the bottom price, because this happened to me in Aberbeeg. I didn't get what I thought I was going to get. The hidden costs reality check. Everybody underestimates refurb costs, and this is where deals die. You can walk through a house thinking it needs 25k of work. New kitchen, new bathroom, bit of decorating, but then you start the work and discover the roof felt has degraded. Underneath the tiles, they look fine. The boiler pump and the PCB board have gone and you need a new boiler. There's obsolete wiring, which means chasing out walls and replastering. Suddenly, you're 15k over budget, and what looked like a profitable deal becomes a break-even nightmare. If you want to work with me one-to-one to help accelerate your portfolio, go to the link in the description. And if you want my complete auction checklist that I use for every property, it's in the second link in the description. But here's what's even more dangerous than underestimating costs. It's the psychological games that auction house plays to make you overpay in the first place. The bidding psychology game. Auctioneers are masters of manipulation, and if you don't understand their tactics, you'll get played every single time. The emotional investment trap. You've spent time researching, money on legal pack reviews, maybe even had a survey done. Now you're emotionally invested. I watched this happen to someone at a live auction last month. They'd clearly done their homework on a property and had a maximum bid written down. But when someone outbid them by 500 quid, you could see them thinking, another 1,000 won't hurt. 96k became 97. Then let me just go to 100. Before they knew it, they were at 107. Either their original figures were completely wrong, or they just made a 12k emotional decision. The fake bid in reality. Here's something most people don't know. It's completely legal for auction houses to create bids below the reserve price. They will literally bid against thin air to create momentum. You'll see the auctioneer doing off-the-wall bids, looking at empty spaces in the room and saying, I have 68k, 69k, 70k, when nobody's actually bidding. That also applies online, and they're building excitement and making you think there's more interest than there really is. My bidding strategy. I never bid early. Why would I push the price up for myself? I wait until there are 2 people left, or when the bidding starts to slow down. Then I enter. I want to take the heat out of it and not add fuel to the fire. The last auction I attended, I watched a property go from 45k to 62k with early bidders pushing each other up. I came in at 63k when it slowed down and I won it. If I'd started bidding at 45k, it probably would have gone to 70k. Now let me show you how to set yourself up financially so you can actually complete when you win a bid. The finance speed game. When you win at auction, the clock starts ticking immediately. And if you're not prepared, you'll lose your deposit and potentially face legal action. Here's what most people get wrong about auction finance. Bridge finance is king. Forget about mortgages for auction purchases. you need bridging finance or cash, and it needs to be arranged before you bid. I use 90% loan to value bridge deals regularly. I put down 30k on a 300k purchase and complete within 28 days. I then refinance onto a mortgage 6 months later once I've added the value. The 28-day reality. From hammerfall to completion, you've generally got 28 days maximum. Your solicitor needs to be experienced with auction timelines, and your broker needs lenders to prioritise speed. I learned this the hard way early on. I won a bid on Friday, called my broker on Monday thinking I had plenty of time. Turns out the lender they lined up needed 6 weeks for processing. I had to scramble to find bridging finance and I nearly lost the deal. Insurance timing trap. Critical mistake people make. You need insurance from the auction day when you exchange, not from completion. That's potentially 28 days of risk exposure that most people don't factor in. But even with perfect financing, you need to know which types of properties actually work at auction and which ones to avoid completely. The property types that actually work. Not all auction properties are created equal. After 20 plus purchases, here's what I focus on and what I avoid. Mixed use blocks. I love blocks with shops and flats. Shops always rent. Tenants don't leave. You get stable income. My 3 shops in Aberdeen still have the original tenants from 2023. Nobody's left. Compare that to residential tenants who might move every year or two. Ex-landlord stock. With interest rates pushing older landlords to exit, there's more quality rental stock coming through the auctions. These are often much better than traditional repossessions and probate properties that used to dominate. Size matters. That's what she said. Here's a technical point that catches people out. Check the EPC certificates because floor space is listed at the bottom. Most lenders need a minimum of 35 to 37 square meters for flats or they're not going to lend. I've seen people buy studio conversions that are only 28 square meters, thinking they got a bargain, but then discover they can only get specialist lenders with terrible rates because mainstream lenders won't touch them. What I avoid. Anything with major title issues. Properties I can't view. Anything with the seller's fees add more than 3k to the purchase price. But here's something most people don't know about. The relationship game that can give you a massive advantage. The auction house relationship game. Here's something that separates successful auction buyers from the rest. I've got the auctioneers on WhatsApp personally. Building relationships give you market intelligence that you can't get anywhere else. You can call the office, ask for specific auctioneers handling your lot and have a chat. So what do I ask them? What do you think about this property? How many people came to the viewings? What's the interest level like? The information is gold. If they tell me only 3 people viewed it and there's not much interest, I know I might get closer to the guide price. If they say 20 people viewed it and the phone's been ringing all week, I know it's going to be competitive. Last month, an auctioneer told me a property I was interested in had turned people's noses up a bit because the guide price has been dropped from 55 to 45k. That told me there might be an opportunity to get it cheap because people were questioning why the price had been reduced. I got it for 43k. And it was actually a great deal. The price drop was just because it was listed as leasehold when it was actually a 999-year lease, which is basically freehold. But knowing when not to buy is just as important as knowing when to buy. When not to buy at auction. Let me save you some money by telling you when to walk away, because recognizing bad deals is just as important as spotting good ones. When it was recently on the market for less, I always check online to see if properties were previously listed with estate agents. I was at an auction recently where people were bidding 50k plus on a property that had been on the market for 40k just 6 months earlier with a modern method of auction that didn't sell. Nothing had changed except the auction excitement. Why pay 50k when the seller was willing to accept 40k before, when you can't even view it? Some properties have sitting tenants and they don't allow viewings. Unless you're getting it stupidly cheap, this is too risky. I bought one property sight unseen that was featured on Homes Under the Hammer. It worked out, but only because I got it for 43k. When similar properties were selling for 70k, the margin for error was huge. When the legal pack has major red flags. Chancellor liability. You can insure against it for 50 quid, but restricted covenants, that's affecting your exit strategy. Or title issues that will make refinancing impossible. These are deal killers. But here's where the real opportunities are. Before and after the auction itself. The pre and post auction opportunities. Here's where the real deals are, and most people completely miss these opportunities. Pre-auction. If there's not much interest at viewings, approach the sellers directly. They might accept your offer to avoid auction fees and uncertainty. How to do it? I've done this several times. Call the auction house, speak to the auctioneer and say, I'm interested in lot 47. Would the seller consider a pre-auction offer? Sometimes they'll say no, but often they're open to it, especially if viewings have been quiet. Post-auction. This is my favourite strategy. When a property doesn't sell, the seller goes from motivated to desperate. They've paid auction fees, expected to sell, had their hopes up, and now they're stuck with the property and have to consider putting it back in another auction with more fees. I always hang around after auctions and see if properties didn't sell, and then approach the auction house about post-auction offers. The sellers are much more flexible on price, terms, and creative payment structures because they just want the problem solved. You can sometimes negotiate longer completion periods, creative payment terms, and significant discounts. My complete auction checklist. Before I bid on any property, I tick these boxes. Miss one and you could lose thousands. Legal pack, reviewed by a solicitor who understands auction timelines. 3-tier comparable analysis, completed with worst case scenario, profitable. Refurb costs calculated with 20% contingency minimum. Finance pre-approved and ready. Bridge or cash, but never a mortgage. Insurance arranged from exchange date, not completion. Maximum bids set and written down. Never deviate from this number. Exit strategy clear and profitable at worst case scenario. Solicitor instructed with ID documents and proof of funds ready. Viewing completed, if possible, or video tour analysed thoroughly. Miss any of these steps and you're gambling, not investing. If you want this complete checklist I use for every auction property, grab it from the second link in the description. But here's the final piece of the puzzle that determines whether you actually make money or just break even. The bottom line truth. Look, I need to be completely honest with you about auctions because there's so much nonsense talked about them online. The reality, auctions aren't magic, they're not guaranteed bargains, and they're definitely not suitable for beginners who don't know what they're doing. I've seen people lose everything because they got caught up in the excitement, they didn't do proper due diligence, and they thought they could wing it without understanding the process. But here's the flip side. If you understand the process, do proper due diligence, and stick to your numbers, they can be incredibly profitable. I've doubled my money on auction purchases, but only because I've treated them like a business, not a game. The difference between success and failure comes down to discipline. In the next auction, you could buy something at the right price and be 10k up because you waited and were disciplined, or get emotional, overbid, and turn a good deal into a disaster. I've given you everything you need to be in the first category, the disciplined buyers who make money while others will lose it. The choice is yours, but now you know exactly how the game is played, what the real risks are, and how to stack the odds in your favour. Remember, buy with formulas and not feelings. Do your homework, stick to your numbers, and don't let anyone pressure you into paying more than a deal is worth. That's how you win at auctions while everyone else is gambling with their money. Right, so you've got the complete A to Z of property auctions. You know how to find deals, avoid the traps, and actually make money instead of losing it. But here's the thing, once you've bought at auction, many of you will be looking to flip these properties for profit. And if you want to do that as effectively as possible, you need to watch my next video on how to flip houses for beginners, step-by-step guide. In that video, I share everything I've learned from flipping 10 to 12 properties per year. The exact process, the numbers that work, and the mistakes that will cost you thousands. Because buying right at auction is only half the battle. You need to know how to add value and exit properly to actually make the profits that you're after. Click the link on the screen now, and I'll see you on the next one.